So hi everybody, we are now looking at chapter 8 in the Glickman-Ross-Gordon textbook, and this one is looking at directive informational behaviors. Remember what the point of this chapter is. We're transitioning down the spectrum. This is a slight improvement over direct control. It is an improvement, but it is a slight improvement. I think that's important because it's showing that there are models that are going to be more teacher-centered. I like this model. You can really move, if you are using direct control in your conferencing, you can really move to integrate this model into your practice, and that's something that I think it's very important, and I think it's something that all of you should consider if you are in a position where you have to be directive control. I like directive informational, I like collaborative, and I think that these are models that work when you conference. So there's a thin line between them, because you're going to use words like "I suggest you do" or "possible alternatives include," and ultimately you're still going to make the final decision, but the teacher has the opportunity to give input and feedback. I like that. I think that's important, and I think that matters when we're looking at this model. So the 10 steps of the model, once again, this is all in the textbook, and it's done nicely on a continuum, which I think is important to see. But I think this is something that you can visit on your own. But I think it's a big idea, and I think it's important. So step 1, it's identical to the directive control model. The supervisor knows what the difficulties are. They tell the teacher what seems to be the problem. The supervisor has gathered data from other sources and conducted the observations, and they know what the problem is. But the teacher is going to listen to what the supervisor has to say in this model. Then you ask the teacher for input. You let the teacher see how they feel. So you can see how the teacher feels, but then you're going to consider their input. It could be something as the teacher doesn't understand the wishes or vice versa. Then your conference is going to be very simple and straightforward, which is we're crossing our fingers, and that's what we're hoping for. So in this model, that's what we want. That's what we want to see, and we want it to be something that benefits everybody. So next, you understand how the teacher feels about the problem. The supervisor will listen to the perception, but it's more for clarification purposes. The supervisor has to determine whether they believe what the teacher is saying or what the teacher thinks is important as well. So that can be a challenge as well, because you're listening, but do you believe what the teacher is actually saying? That's a challenge. So then you mentally determine possible solutions. The previous model, you mentally determine the best solutions, but now you're looking at possible solutions. You are presenting the teacher with choices. You have to come up with the options that would work best for the teacher. The supervisor still chooses what the solutions are, but you're giving the teacher choices. So the teacher can think about them and present them to you and go with the one that they want. That's what makes this model different, and that's what makes this model better. You give the teacher alternatives, you give them choices, but you need to say that the teacher has choice in this matter. Give them 2 or 3 possible behaviors that they can do to improve or to change the situation, and then you have to honor them as well. You're honoring your word to the teacher just as well as they're honoring their word to you when you're conferencing with them. So the next step, you would ask the teacher for specific input. You're asking them to react. If you think this is appropriate, the teacher can change some of the alternatives as long as you personally agree with what the possibilities are. You are still in charge. You are the boss that is in charge of this model. You are the one that's going to give the input to the teacher, and I think that's important. Then you frame the final choices. This is another big idea. You say option A, option B, option C, which one best serves you, but then ultimately the teacher is going to make a choice, and then you have to decide whether or not it's a choice you want to honor or not honor. You have to ask the teacher to choose, explain why they chose the model, and commit to the model. When you give teacher choice, you must commit to it. You can't bend. You can't go against the fact that you gave them autonomy, and if you did, you look like a complete and total idiot. So when you give the teacher choice, that's important. You can't bend against it. Then you give them specific actions that need to be taken. The teacher chose. Now the supervisor defines a plan so that those actions can be taken. So they're working as a team, but the supervisor gives the teacher some form of a choice. Then you follow up on the plan, you check in, you have a clear outline. The teacher restates the plan to the supervisor so that they understand it, and it's the same as it is in the previous model. It's a good model to use when you know there are things you need to change and you want the teacher to feel like you support them, but it gives the teacher more choice. You, as the supervisor, are still in control and you make the ultimate decisions, which is a big idea, and I can't say enough how much I truly think that that matters in this situation. So, when do you use this approach? You use this approach more or less when the teacher is functioning at the low developmental level, when the group doesn't have specific knowledge that the supervisor does. When the teacher's confused, I think it's important because then you're going to help them with choice. If the teacher trusts the supervisor, this is a good model to use because then the supervisor becomes the sage on the stage. They become the expert in terms of what they're doing for the teacher. So I think that's a big idea as well. If time is short, this is another important model that you can use as well. So the next model is collaborative, which I think is a good model. Remember that on the spectrum, we're relinquishing control to the teacher. We're giving them more feedback, more say. But if you have the right relationships with teachers, this is an acceptable model and something that you want to consider doing. So we'll be looking at collaborative behaviors next. Thank you.